Well, Twins fans, we're into the off season, which means we get to be a little bit more creative with our content. And today we have a former Twins reliever from back in the mid-90s. I highly doubt you're going to know who it is, but we're going to have some fun anyway. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. Been watching the Twins for 30 years, covering them for about half that, and professionally did that for a while here up until COVID. I'm very happy to be joined by Mr. Dave Brown. He's been covering ball at large for a little while here, since the summer of Sosa and McGuire, BBWAA member for 12 years right now, and then first-year voter of the Hall of Fame. Got to vote for Joe Mauer. What's up, Dave?
Hi, Brandon. I'm very excited about our special show with our special Major League guest.
And so I used to host a podcast with this gentleman. I'm just going to bring him in because I want to make sure that he can hear us and we can hear him. But it's former Major League reliever Gregg Olson. Gregg, how we doing?
Good. Great to be back with you.
Yes. So if people are not aware, and I don't know, I think Dave might not be. Gregg and I hosted for a spell a show called That 90s Baseball Pod, where we talked about all things MLB from the 1990s. My theory is it's probably Twitter user at Not Gayetti's favorite podcast of all time. And we had a lot of fun with it. But Gregg, we talked a little bit about your time with the Twins, but it wasn't a huge part of your career. We'll talk about that today. We'll talk about, the end of your time with the Twins, because it was a very short time. And we'll also talk about an absolutely incredible minor league baseball team that you played with that I think the story behind it is fun. But again, how nice to have you. They can follow you on Twitter at GREGGOLSON30. And how you been?
I've been good. Been busy. Started getting upgraded with ESPN. So did the San Diego Braves wild card series. And then I was supposed to stay on that and have San Diego and the Dodgers, which would have been an amazing series to watch. Right. And I'll just say I got traded to the Cleveland-Detroit series last minute due to a health issue. So did Cleveland and Detroit, a couple of your central teams. And it was a great series. It was a lot of managerial decisions, managerial moves. Fascinating to sit on the outside and watch. And just got done with that. Got home Sunday after being gone for over 2+ weeks, and finally got around to golfing today. And short game suffered with no golf clubs and no chipping practice over the last 3 weeks.
Sounds tragic.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts of Cleveland and Detroit? Because I know Dave and I this year have at least I've been kind of beside myself that the Twins showed a lack of ability to compete down the stretch. Neither of those teams are going to blow you out of the water, and yet at the same time, the Twins faltered just so badly.
Well, Detroit was amazing since August 10th and went, I think, 33-11, something close to that nature. And, other than Tarek Skubal, you kind of look around the room going, what do we got? Riley Green had a nice year, but probably the first team to make the playoffs with not one player hitting 25 home runs and not one player having 75 RBIs. And so Riley Green led the team, 24 bombs, 74 RBIs, had a really good year and a good defender out and left. But it was a mix and match for A.J. Hinch. He had a good back end of the bullpen, and both bullpens got exposed with constant use. We called it the familiarity response of, the hitter, C. Cade Smith, Tim Herron, Clase with the Guardians, excuse me. You know what? I made the whole series without saying that word. I really did. I got like in one time, and then I caught it, and that's the first time I've actually said that word.
All good. We understand. You're human.
Yeah. And so I felt like, the Detroit guys had seen these bullpen guys every day and the familiarity of catching up, and they caught up to them, and Detroit had a good series. They have nice pieces. I just, you kind of look at Minnesota going, really? You guys couldn't have figured out a way. They had, Detroit had Skubal and Olson.
Yep.
And then Cleveland really didn't have a great starting rotation, had a great bullpen. He had Bybee, but
Right.
second time Bybee came around, he was out in the second. And Alex Cobb was out in the second. And the starting rotation got exposed, and Jose Ramirez wasn't every bit as advertised in the least bit. I just felt like it was kind of a back and forth of guys not getting it done. And Detroit found a way, and they were playing small ball. They were playing old baseball, getting guys over, getting guys in. And they found a way to stay in the series until the end, and they had Skubal on the mound, and Lane Thomas goes deep for a grand slam, which I think had to have shocked about 100% of the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Gregg, you're even though you're an all-star reliever and that was your position, it doesn't sound like you were all that enamored with the style of pitching in terms of just overloading with the bullpen and not having really any starters. I mean, maybe they didn't have a choice, but what do you think about that? Just as a game plan for a team where you don't even let. I mean, Bybee, that extended into the next series. I think Bybee got 4 outs against the Yankees, and that was it, and he was done. And what do you think about that as a way to win a game?
Well, I think it got exposed in the Detroit series. The same guys running in and out, and as good as they were during the season, I think, 2 of them had 1.72s, and Clase had a .61 ERA. You got to be really analytical and intelligent to go out there night after night. And you can't really use the same stuff. You have to mix it up. You have to change the game on the guy that you're facing, because at some point he's going to get onto your great, if it's a Cade Smith invisible fastball, they caught up to it. And if it was the Hunter Gaddis slider, they found a way to get to his fastball. And, Clase gave up 80% as many runs as he did in the 162 game season. He gave up 4 runs and he gave up 5 all season. So guys had seen it and they catch on. And so it's hard to go out there night after night, and they did it in game 5 against Detroit to get 7 innings out of 4 or 5 guys that have pitched every game that series. You're losing that little mystique, and I understand, but at some point you got to trust. I mean, Bybee's been pretty good. You got to trust him a little bit. Alex Cobb, they took Bybee out in the first game, up 5-0, 4 2/3, and it was like, thanks, that was it. Nobody on base, and I'm like, wow. And so that became the method, and they tried it against the Yankees. It's just, I get it. It's just not going to be able to be sustained.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think too, people are talking about the Yankees' path being easy or easy-ish to get through, and that all the more is the reason why Twins fans are like, geez, gee whiz, this could have been their year to not be a perfect team, but still get through the playoffs, piecing it together with some good starting pitching, some good relievers, and when you get into a series and you can condense that into your 6, 7, 8 best pitchers, the Twins could have been right there if they could have just been a little more timely with the sticks. Well, hey, let's do this. Let's take our first pause. When we come back, I am going to switch the pace up a little bit here because I think I want to do these in opposite order of what I had intended. But again, first, let's just take a quick break. You know, we got to give some love to our friends at PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as few as 4 correct picks. It's the best way to get in on the action in most states: California, Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, quite a few states. You got to get on there and check and see for yourself. It's the only real money daily fantasy sports platform which has an injury insurance policy. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your big guys gets injured. If they leave in the first half, your lineups stay intact. And you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes when your picks hit. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play 5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so we got Gregg Olson, who was with the Twins for a bit in 1997, better known as a Rookie of the Year relief pitcher drafted in the late 80s, 4th overall out of Auburn. Won the Rookie of the Year over Ken Griffey Jr. Lots of fun stuff, and I would highly recommend, if you haven't, to go back and check out that 90s baseball pod because it's still in the archives on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. It's in there. Now, Greg, I did want to talk to you about the 1995 Buffalo team, but I think I want to talk about the reason we would have you on in the first place, Twins related. In 1997, you joined the Twins. 1996, not the greatest of years. Some walks. You're with Detroit. You're with Houston. Bounced around. How did the Minnesota opportunity come to pass for you? It was your age 30 season, so you were far enough into your career where you probably had at least a couple teams interested.
I felt like there was an opening at the back end of the bullpen. I mean, Aguilera was there and doing what he did. And at the point where I was at, it was, if I can find a 7th, 8th inning situation, I love Tom Kelly, had him in the 92 team that went and played in Japan. So really enjoyed my time with him. And I just felt like it was a good situation. I threw extremely well in spring training. We ended spring training on back-to-back days, which is kind of, traditional, just to get a little back-to-back day work. And at some point between those 2 days, I started, I was clean those 2 days. I started flying open a little bit. And then I got into the season, and I was just a train wreck. I mean, I couldn't. My two-seam fastball, which is usually 4 inches of horizontal, slight vertical break, ended up being closer to 10 inches, and I didn't pick it up. Breaking ball was getting smothered. Changeup was getting pulled into the left-handed batter spot. I wasn't picking any of it up. That I was flying open, and was just completely unsuccessful there. I felt bad. I felt bad for TK too, because he had to let me go somewhere, sometime in the middle of May with just an astronomical ERA, and it just didn't work. I didn't get cleaned up, and then got released, picked up, a day later by Kansas City, went down to AAA, and did a month in AAA with Omaha, and got my mechanics cleaned up. They needed a starting pitcher, so I started to work on, building up some innings, and really got cleaned up, and ended up, one of your Twins guys says I'm blaming the pitching coach. Well, I was like, well, I didn't pick it up either, but either did he.
Yeah.
But I go to Kansas City and I go 20 scoreless right when I get there, and throw up a 3 ERA in the last 3 months with Kansas City, and end up making it a manageable season, as much damage as I did with my month and a half with the Twins.
But Where does a guy like you stay when you're on a team for a short period? I mean, obviously you're hoping you make it all year, but are you renting a place? Are you in a hotel? What kind of living situation does a guy like that have?
I was actually thinking about renting a nice house, and had a young son, probably 1.5, borderline 2, 1.5, and a daughter that was just born that February. So I was thinking about having my whole family come out and spend the summer with me out in Minnesota, rent a house, and it wasn't going. I wasn't throwing well. I was seeing, where everything was going, and I held them off, and I was staying in a hotel downtown, and would check out, leave my stuff, whatever else I didn't need in the clubhouse, and so it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't a great situation, but it's what you got. In the past, Cleveland, I had an apartment. Detroit, I had an apartment. Go to Arizona, we rented a house for 2 years. Um, try to put your family at ease and give them a good place to stay. So you find a good house.
You would always like to tell a TK story about you were kind of poking fun at him, and then he didn't seem to think it was as funny as you were. I think he'd thrown BP that day or the day before. Do you remember that story?
Oh, very well. Yeah, no, TK was intimidating. He really was. And so I'm on year 9, hypothetically, in the big leagues, and had a good career up to that point, and had a couple different managers. And I told you I'd been with TK in '92. So I am outgoing in the clubhouse. I have fun. And so TK goes walking by after throwing BP, and he's got ice bags from the neck to the left wrist. And I mean, it's as many ice bags as he could probably put on. And and it was pretty amazing they fit this many ice bags into that space. But so he goes walking by me, and I'm leaving the training room because I had thrown, live BP against the Twins. And so I got a bag on my elbow, a bag on my shoulder. He has doubled the bags. And so I just went by and kind of smirked. I was like, "You all right?" And he just goes, "What's so damn funny?" And dead serious, deadpan.
Mm.
And I was like, "That didn't go well.
No.
I'm getting cut."
He's
Like,
so
man.
understated, though. Like, I can hear that and be like, yeah, that's not good. That's not great.
Yeah. No, and you're sitting there. I think I was a minor league free agent, and I spent 95, 96, 97, 98 as minor league free agents. So you're kind of trying to read tea leaves and guess what the manager and the pitching coach are thinking, and every word means something, and where your locker's at means something, and who you throw to in BP means something. And right after that, I was like, oh man, that didn't help. So that's just TK being TK. Like I said, I made the team. Got invited to his poker game on the plane, which found out a couple of days later is like a huge deal. And made the mistake of asking him how he did on the flight and the card game the night before when we got to a city. And then I got that's none of your damn business. And I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm not pitching for another couple days. I'm just dropping down the totem pole by me just trying to make conversation with one of the great managers of all time.
Greg, you'd mentioned what the effect that it might have had on him having to talk to you about getting cut and getting, I don't know if it was a DFA or I think it probably would have been at that time. What was that conversation like? What was that conversation like with Tom when that happened?
He just called. He called me and he's like, and it was just me and him. And he's just like, I'm really sorry. We're letting you go. And I was like, and I knew that everything had been there, everything, I'd thrown well the year before, even though the numbers didn't add up. And I just kind of went, is there any option for AAA? Because I like the team. I really did enjoy the team, the fans, the players. And he's like, no. Wow. And I was like, all right. And then, so I met a couple guys after the game. I walked out and kind of let them do their stuff, and then came back later and cleared out my stuff, and met Steinbach and Greg Myers. And Steiny looks at me, he goes, dude, he called us out to a meeting out in center field before BP. And he was like really emotional when he was telling, what happened and what they were doing. He goes, he really got emotional. And I saw TK, like I said, I got back with Kansas City and was throwing well. And Twins were on the field for BP in Kansas City, and I just walked up, shook his hand, said, hey, TK, appreciate our time. Thanks for everything. And he just looks at me, he goes, you're back where you belong. And that was it. And you and I had a conversation, had him on our podcast. He was amazing. He was great. Unbelievable memory for the smallest of details. I really did love him. Didn't blame him a bit. It was just, I got into a bad mechanical funk, and, after that, I figured out how to get out of it on my own so that it was 2 pitches instead of a month.
Does that story that Steinbach told about how emotional TK got and some of the other things that you mentioned, does that sort of get at why guys like to play for him?
Yeah. And it meant a lot to me. He wasn't happy, and obviously it's hard, but it was worse. And, he was great to play for. I haven't met somebody that didn't. Well, a couple of the young guys in Arizona didn't really like him because his hard, sarcastic, straight at it. And I talked about how hard it was for me in spring training, and I had 9 years in. It's hard on young guys. And so a couple of the young guys that I got in Arizona that they picked up in Rule 5 or the small expansion draft didn't like him.
Brent Brady was one, wasn't he?
I shall not comment any further.
You told that story on the podcast about Brent Brady doing something, and Tom Kelly says, "Are you having fun right now, son?" "No, sir, I'm not," or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He struck out and kind of fell over in the box.
Yeah.
He's like, "You having fun?" Kid's like, "No." He goes, "You're not a whole lot of fun to watch right now."
I love that story. Hey, let's do this. I do have a question that kind of relates to that I want to get on the other side, but let's do our final break, and then we'll be right back here with Gregg Olson. So, Dave, this is a new one. It's called Hymns. And guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so that we can perform in the bedroom. Hymns provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so that you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Dave, I did not tell you ahead of time that we were doing this. I wanted to see your unfiltered reaction, and at the same time, too, I'm doing my best not to have a big old smile on my face. But
we have a guest,
Yes, Hymns is changing men's health care by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription is required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, Greg, how many times? So you get DFA'd by the Twins, or you get cut by the Twins. How many different times in your career, and was this one of them where you thought, well, this could be it?
No, that was one of them. That was really the only one of them. I where it was like, man, this might be it. Figured I had a little leeway. I was awful with the Braves after an injury. Had a little leeway. Always felt like I'd shown enough and done enough, and other than one bad inning somewhere along the line, the numbers kind of blew up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that one was, I was questioning everything. But I'd seen enough in spring training where I was just going, I just need to either go home, get somewhere, and get straightened out, whatever it was, because everything was there. It was just non-controllable, and you just don't all of a sudden go, wow, you know what? I can hit a silver dollar from 60 feet, and then all of a sudden I can't broadside 17 inches. It was just, I knew something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it.
After the a little earlier in your career, the way that you left the Orioles, as I understand it, they thought that you needed, I don't know if they thought you needed Tommy John or some kind of surgery to correct a torn ligament in your elbow. You didn't want to do it that way. You ended up having a career at times quite successful without Tommy John. Did you do the right thing after all these years looking back on it?
You know what? See, that's the hard part. Was if it was the Tommy John today, I would have done it in a heartbeat. It was the Tommy John in 1993 where I'm getting Frank Jobe going, here's what we're going to do. You might not ever be able to throw a baseball that breaks a pane of glass again.
Right.
And so I'm going, well, you know what? I'm just going to rehab it for a while. I'm going to be missing 12 to 18 months regardless of what I do. I'm just going to rehab it really hard. And I saw Steve Carlton at a golf tournament at the end of that season, and he gave me his guy, Gus Hefner, that lived in Philadelphia. And Steve Carlton, his workout routine was legendary. So I drove up there 3 times a week in the off season in 19 with this guy. And I was strong as ever. Didn't hurt me to do anything. I had just blown up my mechanics so badly pitching with a torn ligament at the end of the 93 season that it took me a year to get back, and it's still mentally I lost like an invincibility. You as an athlete and you're one of the best in the world at what you do, you think you're immortal, and all of a sudden you tear a ligament and you're not. And so kind of lost a little bit of an edge mentally. And like I said, it took me a while to get back physically, mechanically on track.
This is a little bit out of left field, but the one other thing, and I really have like 10 things, but if there's one other thing that I wanted to know about, it's what was the Billy Ripken baseball card controversy like from inside the Orioles clubhouse?
Well, that was the beginning of '88. So that was the spring training of '88. I was still playing with Auburn. I got there September of '88. Still, I mean, it's an ongoing thing. His response when I did ask was, do you honestly think that it would have been face up if I didn't know?
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. A little too.
So that was all he gave me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if somebody did it and he didn't know, you probably got I mean, you're looking at a clock face going, mathematical odds of it being at noon and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he kind of gave me you're a dip
Yep.
blank for even asking, because knowing him, I should have known, but I was just asking.
People can go back and listen to our Billy Ripken episode of that 90s baseball pod. He was actually a fun guest too. I see his nephew Ryan, Cal's son, doing some stuff. So, there's still Ripken influence in the game today for sure. So, Greg, we're going to run just a slight bit over, but if you're still able, I want to talk about this 1995 Buffalo team.
All right, do it.
So, I'll lay the foreground, or I'll lay the groundwork for Dave and the listeners. But so after the 1994/95 player strike, with players not certain what 95 would look like, you see a lot of guys like going overseas. I don't remember if Shane Mack went overseas then or if it was after, but there was that, and then guys who signed minor league contracts because the minor league weren't on strike. And so what this all became, as Greg was part of, is one of the most accomplished AAA teams that I can ever remember seeing. The 1995 Buffalo Bisons had 25 players take at least one plate appearance. 20 of them had big league experience at some point in their careers. 25 players threw at least a third of an inning with that team. 22 of them had big league experience. This is, for me, got to be the most bold blue ink roster I've ever seen for a AAA team. It's just incredible, and I want to know what the vibe was like, because you had to be looking around like, yeah, this isn't just a bunch of guys. Look no further than the replacement players who are trying to take your spots and being the joke that they were. But you guys had a big league roster full of players down at AAA.
Yeah, no, and it was about as fun a month and a half I probably had ever had in the minor leagues. Going back, and you probably got the roster in front of you, but we had Brooke Fordyce catching. We had Torey Lovello at third base. Shortstop was Billy Ripken. Second base, Casey Candell. First base was Herb Perry, who was coming up through the chain. Richie Sexton was coming up through the chain. Outfield was Ruben Amaro, Brian Giles, and Jeremy Burnitz. They were all had been in the big leagues. And then the pitching staff, me, John Farrell, Paul Shuey was on his way up. We had Ray. We had who?
Jason Grimsley,
Joe Klink,
Paul Shuey, Chad Ozick. You maybe didn't interact with these guys, but Danny Graves was on his way up. Jim Poole, who was on our show, may he rest in peace, was there for a minute too. Joe Roa won 17 games that year in AAA, which you never see anymore. He was on the Twins about 7-8 years later. The name. This is a remembering some guys treasure trove. Alan Embry, Todd Froworth. Trying to think of if there's anybody else that would. Les Lancaster, Albie Lopez. On the offensive side, you didn't mention David Bell. David Bell was down there too. Tim Costo played a lot of first base. I'm trying to think. Jesse Levis, Torey Lovello. You said.
Oh no, we were unbelievable.
Lloyd McClendon was even down there for a bit. Rick Rona. I mean, this is one of the best AAA teams I could even imagine. And Dave, I don't know if you were even tangentially aware of this roster.
A little bit, just because the Indians at the time it wasn't the I think the absolute best players had come through, their system already, Manny and all that, but they were still bringing up, you mentioned Burnitz and Giles, and these are very good major league players who are on the verge of, if not stardom, certainly very good careers. So I the fantasy baseball player that I was, I think I remember that these guys were that good. It was funny just how good that was the best year for the Indians, and just to have this team, a super team at AAA, just in case anything went wrong, was kind of an amazing resource.
Well, and it was kind of a perfect storm of the strike and an absolutely stacked major league team where these good players in AAA weren't breaking through. And that's how you get Jeremy Burnett's getting 500 plate appearances and that sort of thing. Brian Giles, 486. Torey Lavallo, 552. Luis Lopez, 499. I mean, guys who had big league experience were playing full seasons down at AAA. I don't know. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that ballpark for a few of those games in 1995. But I was only 9 years old, so I wasn't really traveling too much then.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been allowed in.
Yeah, well.
No, it was fun. They great group of guys, played hard every night, and it was good. You couldn't. I got there because I was like, I played with Jose Mesa in Baltimore, and I was like, if you guys are counting him to be your back end guy, I'm going to Cleveland. I was like, great arm. But he didn't get anybody out in the 2 years we had him in Cleveland. He was more in AAA in Rochester than he was in the big leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if you guys are counting him to be your back end guy, I'm going to get fixed. I'll take the job in a minute and get a part of those 50 saves that he got.
Yeah.
So that was my thought. And it was,
I would have bet on that. I would have bet on that too, Greg. I don't blame you for he wasn't much until something changed with the Indians organization, but he was very hittable before that, for sure.
And Greg, you had very 2024 friendly numbers: 2.49 ERA, 13 saves in 21 2/3 innings, no homers, 25 strikeouts, and 9 walks. So 10.4 strikeouts per 9, 1.15 WHIP. Very, very fine walk numbers. You would have fit right in the 2024 landscape with those numbers.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was good. I got back on track. And it was comfortable. I mean, but in AAA, I thought I was a major league pitcher, so I should get those guys out at a good clip. I think I had one bad night in Indianapolis that blew the ERA out of the ones.
Who hasn't had a bad in Indianapolis though?
No, it was just a bad night.
No.
So they happen. Apparently, they happen to me more than they happen to everybody else. But is what it is. It's over now, and I can look back and critique everybody that's playing. So,
yeah, doing your job, right?
Right.
Well, hey, Greg, thank you. We thank you. We appreciate you so much for the time. People can follow you on Twitter at GreggOlson30. He's Gregg Olson. Across the screen from me is Mr. Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warren, saying thank you so much for listening to Locked On Twins, and we'll see ya
tomorrow
night.